Donald and Ed, we ready? Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back again, Council and Assistant Chief Kevin Aldon. I would like to remind you that you are still under oath, sir, and we will proceed with the afternoon questions for today. And at this time, I would like to recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome back. I hope lunch was good. Mine was actually very nice, light. I'll be hungry again in an hour. So my line of question is quite simple. I'll just tell you a quick story. According to your May 27, 2017 log, at around 10 p.m., a few, maybe three police officers, P61, P72, and P55, departed Smiling Cove Marina on Zodiac 2 with First Lady Diane to Managaha Island. They dropped her there, and then the boat turned around and docked by 10:18 p.m. at the Smiling Cove Marina. Then at around midnight or 24 hours, again, according to the boat log, two police officers, P11 and P72, 10-6, departed Smiling Cove Marina to Managaha to escort 10:19 First Lady on Zodiac 2 at 1:40 a.m. or approximately 12:40 hours. The Zodiac 2 arrives back at Smiling Cove Marina. Can we put up the exhibit, please? It's up there. Do you have that exhibit in front of you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So my first question is, was any government business being conducted by Ms. Torres between 10 p.m. and 1:40 a.m. on May 27, May 28, 2017 at Managaha Island?
Not that I know of, sir.
Okay. It's kind of late, huh? Was any cargo transported on Zodiac 2 to be dropped off in Managaha with Ms. Torres during this trip?
Not that I know of, sir.
Okay. Were there any passengers on this boat with Ms. Torres?
It doesn't state, sir.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go right down through this line. Was any alcohol transported to Managaha on Zodiac 2 during the trip?
Not that I know of, sir.
You think somebody might know? You think anybody might know these answers?
No, sir.
No. Okay. I guess we'll find out. What was the purpose of this moonlight cruise for the benefit of Miss Diane Torres?
It doesn't state here, sir.
Okay. Fair enough. Was there anyone else in Managaha who was part of Miss Torres's party?
I don't know, sir.
All right. Was Governor Torres even on Managaha?
I don't know, sir.
Who directed DPS personnel and resources to provide this escort to Mrs. Torres? And where did the orders come from?
Normally, when we get a PSD mission, it's coming from the commissioner.
Okay. All right. So,
I have a couple of questions.
sure. Go ahead, Chair.
One moment. Chief Aldon, based on your review of the logbook, the copy in front of you that we provided, is there any indication that the governor was on this trip?
It doesn't say on the document, ma'am.
So it's safe to say he's not on the strip. Otherwise, normally when the governor goes on a DPS boat or is being shadowed or providing, you guys are providing a security detail, normally you would log it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any instance where you would not log it?
Could they have not logged it, or I don't know.
But it's never happened before. Is that correct?
I
To
am
your
not sure.
knowledge, to your knowledge, it's never happened.
Not sure. I
Okay.
can't say for sure.
Okay. Have you ever, since you've been the OIC for boating safety, have you ever done anything like this before? Escorting the First Lady to Manigaha, having boating safety escort the First Lady to Manigaha?
Yes.
Yes. Including escorting her without the governor present.
I don't.
You don't know or you don't remember?
I don't recall.
I don't. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. That's all I have. Are you done with your line of questioning, Representative Camacho?
Thank you, Officer Don. At this time, I will yield to you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. At this time, I would like to recognize Representative Ed Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I before I begin, Cam, can you pull out the vessel usage report for June 18, 2019? Okay, thank you. Do we have a copy for Chief, or if you could provide him one copy, please? Thank you. Chief, we ready? Okay. Sorry. My apologies. Sorry. Chief, as you can see, the exhibit that is on the screen, but also you've been given a copy. It's the vessel usage report for June 18, 2019. This exhibit is what number, Cam? 69. Thank you. Okay. It states on this vessel usage report that on June 18, 2019, the jet boat was launched at 4 p.m. to escort, to quote unquote, escort First Lady with 8 packs to Managaha. And the jet boat was recovered, meaning it was in the bay by 1857 hours, or approximately 7 p.m. or 6:57 p.m. to be exact. The operator of the vessel was Sergeant David Reboloman, as well as police officers of the Boating Safety Office, accompanied by the first lady. I'm sorry, they accompanied the First Lady on the Sunset Cruise. According to the usage report, the total time jet boat was unavailable for any rescue or recovery missions was approximately 3 hours. However, during the 3 hours that the jet boat was being used by the First Lady and her 8 guests on Managaha, the total time the engine was actually running was only 50 minutes, meaning the boat set out to Managaha at 4 p.m., was anchored or moored at Managaha to enjoy the sunset, and then sometime before 7 p.m., the First Lady was transported with her 8 guests back to Saipan. The total fuel used for the sunset cruise was 10 gallons. Uh, Chief, if we can just go through this report. Who is the First Lady?
First Lady,
Yes.
the governor's wife.
Okay. Thank you. And who were the 8 guests of Mrs. Torres on the sunset cruise?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Okay. Is there a record anywhere of who exactly accompanied Mrs. Torres on this cruise?
Just the two officers, whoever the 8 packs are, I don't know.
Okay.
Uh,
Were they, would you know if they were family members or any children that were transported on this trip?
It's hard to say. This is all there is written down, sir.
Okay. Is Officer Joyly Sakisat a personal security officer of Mrs. Diane Torres?
She is assigned with boating safety.
She's with boating safety. Okay. Would you know if there was any cargo transported on this trip or any alcohol?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Was any government business being conducted by Mrs. Diane Torres and her 8 guests on Managaha between the hours of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m.?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Um, Thank you. I yield at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of clarifying questions. Can we scroll to the bottom of the signature part? Thank you, Ken. Chief Aldon, it says that this particular vessel usage report was reviewed and approved by you, although I do notice that your signature is not on it. Is this your handwriting, sir? Do you recognize this handwriting?
No, it's not my handwriting.
Is there any reason, do you know whose handwriting it is?
No, ma'am.
Is there any reason why they would put your name as having reviewed and approved this trip?
They normally fill it out, print my name there, then give it to me to sign.
Mhm.
If I didn't sign it, then I haven't
Reviewed it.
reviewed it.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's just that you were answering, you don't know who the passengers were, and your name appears on it, just so you know. Also, do you see any indication on this vessel usage report that the governor was on this trip with the first lady and 8 passengers?
On the report, no, ma'am.
No, it doesn't appear that the governor is on this trip. Is that correct?
It doesn't say.
But if the governor was on this trip, you would certainly put it, right?
I don't fill this out. It's my people that fills it out. If they missed it, I can't say if they did or did not.
What would happen if they missed something crucial like that? Because you're providing security services for the safety of the governor. So what would the repercussion be for your staff?
I'm not too hard on my people with the vessel usage and the logbook. When it comes to missions like this, whether they write it in or not, it's not a reporting requirement for the program, so I don't get on them if or review. Usually, I leave it to my commanders to go over them if they want to.
Okay. Is it safe to say then that the governor was not on this boat?
Well, based on what's written here, ma'am, then
Then the governor was not.
possibly no.
Okay, thank you. Moving along. I will now recognize Representative Donald Magnolia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon again, Officer and Council. Before I begin, can you please pull out the July 2nd vessel usage report? Chief Odon, do you see the usage report in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Can you get the exhibit number for this? All right, this was previously entered evidence exhibit. Chief Odon, on this vessel usage report marked as Exhibit 48, it states that on July 2nd, 2019, the impact boat was launched at 7:35 a.m. to provide PSD for Governor Torres and First Lady, and the impact boat was back in the bay by 9:56 p.m. or approximately 10 p.m. The operator of the vehicle of the vessel, the impact boat, was Police Officer 3 uh, Gui, as well as several DPS officers. According to the usage report, the total time the impact boat was unavailable to respond to any distressed vessels or overdue divers, swimmers, or fishermen was approximately 14 and a half hours. During the 14 and a half hours that the impact boat was being used by Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres, the total engine time was operating at about 8 hours, meaning the boat set out to sea and was either anchored or moored somewhere, and then sometime before 9:57 p.m., Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres were transported back to Saipan. On this boat trip, the impact boat was loaded with 300 gallons of fuel prior to leaving the dock and was carrying an extra 300 gallons on reserve. The total fuel used for this 14 and a half hour boat ride solely for Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres was 500 gallons. Now, Chief, in today's dollars, the fuel expense for this trip alone costs the Sinamite taxpayers around 2,425. Now, Chief Adon, do you know where the governor and his wife went for this 14 and a half hour trip?
It doesn't say, sir.
Right, but would you have any idea where they might have gone?
No, sir.
Would there be a reason why a destination wasn't provided in this report?
No reason
No reason? What do you mean?
why a destination is not put in. Whoever wrote it just didn't put it in.
Now, based on the 500 gallons of fuel usage, is it possible that Governor Torres and Mrs. Torres were transported to the Northern Islands?
I can't say, sir, for sure. It's not written on the document.
Do you know if the cargo? Do you know what was the cargo on this boat during this trip? Do you know that?
No, sir.
Do you know if there were any fishing gear, any alcohol?
No, sir.
Would you happen to know what government business was being conducted by Governor Torres alone with Mrs. Diane Torres in open water for 14 and a half hours on a DPS boat?
What was that?
Do you know if there was any government business that was being conducted by Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres on this DPS boat for 14 and a half hours in open water?
No, sir. They don't explain these things to us, whether, what business they're doing. We just do the PST.
So would you say that this was strictly a personal cruise?
I can't say for sure, sir. It's not stated.
All right. Thank you, Chief Odon. That's all I had for this exhibit.
Can we scroll down to the signature part, Cam? Again, Captain or Chief Aldon, this vessel usage report indicates that you reviewed and approved this vessel usage. Were you aware that your staff is putting your name?
Am I aware?
Yeah. That they, you know, on occasion indicate that you reviewed and approved these vessel usage reports, specifically this one for Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres, consuming up to 500 gallons of fuel.
Yes.
You're aware that they occasionally put your name, even though you haven't reviewed it. Did you in fact approve such trip? Were you aware of it?
Well, if my name is here, then I was, I guess,
Informed.
commander there, but am I aware of it? Yes, I just don't recall on this day.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Okay. Um, I would like to now bring up a previously introduced exhibit. It is the travel authorization cam for September 15th through 17th. TA number 33789. On this date, hold on. Continuing on on September 15th through the 17th, the governor filed a travel voucher stating that he traveled from Saipan to Rhoda and back to Saipan by GPS boat. And going further down, Cam, the purpose of the TA. It states the purpose was to conduct a cabinet meeting in Rhoda, and transportation will be covered by government vessel to and from Rhoda. And furthermore, Governor Torres states that this travel will be performed in the best interest of the CNMI. To your knowledge, Chief Aldon, do you know why Governor Torres would take a boat rather than least expensive mode of travel like airplane or?
No, ma'am, I wouldn't know.
Okay, going down further. It indicates that the governor traveled by boat, boating safety boat. It was a government vessel as earlier seen on the exhibit. Do you know who prepared the boat for this trip? Meaning who put the gas, who checks for safety equipment like flares or life vests? Do you know who prepared?
Boating safety personnel.
Okay. And do you know who paid for the gasoline, the fuel for this boating safety boat to travel to Rhoda? Would you know?
Um, I just noticed. Is it the DPS boat or any
It
other
states
boat?
on the cam, can we go to the purpose of the TA? It states government vessel to and from Rhoda. This is related to the travel of Adrian Mendiola, which we earlier established that he was a part of this trip and he was in fact the operator of the vessel. So it is a boating safety boat.
Okay.
Okay. Do you know who paid for the gasoline for the boat?
No.
Would boating safety office be the one to pay for it?
Specifically, who pays the gas? I don't know, ma'am. Gonna have to ask I guess, the admin office or.
For any boating safety trips?
Yeah, we get the gas, and who pays for it? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in this situation, this particular travel, would boating safety be the one to get the gas?
Yes.
Okay. Since you have been officer in charge of the boating safety program since 2015, is that correct?
Yes. Somewhere there.
Have you ever paid for fuel for boating safety boats out of your pocket?
No.
No. Has any boating safety officers ever paid?
That I don't know.
Has anybody in DPS ever paid for boating safety fuel out of their pocket?
I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Has Governor Torres ever paid for fuel for boating safety?
I wouldn't know that too, ma'am.
You wouldn't know. What do you mean? Isn't it that your personnel gets the fuel?
Yes. Oh, you're asking, has the governor
Oh,
paid
okay.
it, right?
Yeah,
I wouldn't know.
okay. How exactly, can you walk us through the process of how boating safety officers get fuel for their boats, for the boats?
We bring it to Shell, Puerto Rico.
Okay. Have you ever gone to, let's say, mobile gas station?
No, how does
Since
no,
you've
just
been
Shell. No,
Shell. And why is that? Do you know?
that's the government now. Well, that's where we gas. That's about all I know.
That's the government. We know for a fact that Shell has the government contract, right?
Oh, okay.
And do you guys use a fleet card typically, or how do you pay for cash?
No, just
Charged.
right
Okay.
or sign the receipt.
Okay. So it's like a charge, right?
I am not sure how it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. According to the records you provided to this committee, as of last year, June, Shell Gas Corporation is owed over $93,000 in fuel. Can we bring up that receipt? Do you see that, Chief Adon? That statement?
Yes, ma'am.
And it says there, the statement date is June 30th, 2020, and the total amount due is $93,081.71. Do you see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know what this represents?
No, ma'am.
Would you say it is the fuel statement that DPS owes Shell?
I don't know, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, this came in through your subpoena, not Adrian Mendola's or Emery
Okay.
Kipet's. Given this amount that is owed to Cheryl by DPS, do you think it is reasonable to continue using taxpayer dollars to shadow the governor on trips or for fishing or hunting or to Maniagaha?
I don't want to make opinion on that, ma'am. They're beyond my level.
Okay, fair enough. Is there any situation, can you think of any scenario or situation wherein the governor would pay for fuel out of his personal funds for boating safety? Is there any scenario?
Not that I could recall from now here, or
Okay,
would I know of any?
okay, fair enough. Cam, can we put up the receipt exhibit, please? The receipt reimbursement. Joe. I will now enter this memo dated January 8th, 2018. It is a memo of reimbursement to former Secretary of Finance, Ms. Larissa Larson. And one of those, it is a reimbursement for a few fuel receipts. The first three are in Boise, Idaho, incurred in Boise, Idaho. And then the last entry there is dated September 15, 2017. And it was gassed at Middle Road Mobile. And the governor states that it is fuel for DPS boat in the amount of $919.10. The governor further declares that all the above information is true and correct to the best of his knowledge, and this expenditure is for public purpose and therefore meets the public purpose test in accordance with Public Law 11-84 as amended by Public Law 12-2. It is signed by Governor Torres, it appears to be. And then can we go down to the receipt? There it is, to the left. It is a receipt to the left. Can we scroll up a little bit, please? According to this receipt, this expenditure was incurred on September 15, 2017 at 6:29 a.m. Can we go down? And on this receipt, it says, and it's illegible, gallons of fuel, lemon something, coffee, 12-ounce coffee, 8 ounces of coffee again, Saipan ice. I believe that's a kakidani arare, which is sembe. And then the total amount is around $960. But based on the receipt, I mean, the memo that the governor sought reimbursement for, he's only requesting for reimbursement for $919.10. Did you know that on January 8th, 2018, or basically about approximately 4 months after the September boat trip to Rhoda, that Governor Torres filed for reimbursement in the amount of $919.10 for this trip, the September trip, claiming it was for a DPS boat?
I wouldn't know that, ma'am.
Okay, and I asked you this earlier. You earlier said that you couldn't think of any situation wherein the governor would pay for fuel, right?
Yes.
Do you know who else was on the boat other than boating safety personnel? Do you know who else was on the boat? Was Mrs. Diane Torres on the boat?
No, I wouldn't know, ma'am.
Okay. That's all I have for this exhibit. At this time, I would like to recognize Representative Ed Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still, so that, before I begin it, the 900 and, how much was that? $919.10 for the fuel that the governor was reimbursed for, was for fuel likely going to Rhoda and back?
That's what the receipt indicates. Can we go on to receipt? It was handwritten that it is a trip to Rhoda.
Okay. So he took a trip to Rhoda on a private boat? Is that what we, uh,
No, according to the travel authorization, it is a government vessel.
so the governor paid for the fuel for a government vessel?
That's what he's claiming.
And I'm sorry if I may, and Chief, this, would you know if this is for for the impact or anything, or for any of the DPS boats this fuel?
I don't know, sir. This is,
But it would be highly unusual for the governor to pay for fuel for DPS boating since you guys already have the ability to get fuel. Is that correct?
say that again, sir.
You already, if DPS boats need fuel, you guys have access to getting fuel. Is that correct? When you need fuel, the DPS boats are getting fuel. You have a charge, right? You have credit or a charge account. Is that correct?
So, something like that.
Okay. So, in your opinion, would it be unusual for the governor to use his own money to pay to fuel DPS boating safety boats since they already have the ability to get their own fuel?
I don't know anything about this, sir. So
Thank you.
I don't want to.
And that's why it is really confusing as to why the governor would decide on this particular time to provide fuel to a DPS or a government boat, right? Government owned boat. Why wouldn't he be doing that all the time? Why only this time? And Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Is this the only instance that we know of him paying for fuel for a boat, a government boat?
As far as the documents I have reviewed to date.
Okay. And for the record, Madam Chair, you bringing this up, I was not expecting that this is an eye opener and something that should further be looked into. Thank you.
I have one
Yes.
question. Chief Aldon, have you ever asked the governor to pay for fuel for boating safety?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Have you ever asked the lieutenant governor?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
May I proceed?
You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. If we could move on, Cam, could you please pull out the email that's dated for July 2020, email from Vanessa Didang Guerrero to Mr. Gary Jensen of the U.S. Coast Guard? And do we have a copy to provide, Chief? If you could please provide. Cam, what exhibit? 72. Thank you. Okay. According to this email, this is Exhibit 72, according to Cam. Thank you, Cam. After the Pagan excursion by Governor Torres, Mrs. Diane Tudela Torres, the governor's brothers, their spouses, their children, their friends, and other family members. Miss Vanilla, sorry, Miss Vanessa Deliangro, the program manager for the Recreational Boating Safety Grant, sent an email to Mr. Gary Jensen of the U.S. Coast Guard asking him in part, is there any restrictions with utilizing boating safety vessels to transport the governor accompanied by his family members or guests to and from location, the islands, or during other activities? Fuel that is used during these activities are paid by the Sinamay local government. Mr. Leon Guerrero further provides the specific example of the party in Pagan with YouTube personality Mr. Robert Arrington, their meet for dinner, and many family members of Governor Torres and Miss Diane Torres. In Mr. Jensen's reply, he stated, generally speaking, quote unquote, generally speaking, protecting public officials would fall outside of the recreational boating safety realm and would not be an allowable cost. Chief, I would like to direct your attention to this exhibit. You do have a copy provided to you. For us, we do have copies as well. And for those viewing, can read through the screen. During the entire vacation in Pagan last summer by Governor Torres, his brothers, their children, and their extended family, was there any boating safety education being conducted pursuant to the grant agreement?
I don't know if you would call it, or I would, a little bit of it, having them wear their jacket, sizing them up, and explaining how they put it on. That would be considered some education.
That would-
Different from going to schools and having a big crowd of children or a group of fishermen that we want to do a safety talk with them.
Okay. But this boating safety education would be primarily for the governor's family. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Chief. In other words, this was not a video that was recorded for the sake or for advertising education and safety of wearing life jackets. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the only beneficiaries of this so-called safety education would be the family members of the governor. Is that correct?
It's on YouTube, so it's public.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking for, sir? Or
Well, I have seen the videos on YouTube. They're they're wearing jackets. I did watch all the videos, but I don't think there was anything, and stand to be corrected, and I wait to be corrected. But did you or anyone, a chair or anyone, witness any education going on with the requirement of safety jackets or how to properly put them on or anything? Um, they were wearing safety jackets, but how would that be considered safety education for boating or promoting it?
visual effects of just seeing people wearing life jackets on a boat is an educational part.
So the fact that they are wearing safety jackets is being is considered part of the education, because normally when you're educating you would discuss it. Was there anywhere in the YouTube videos, or did you hear anyone talk about the importance of wearing safety jackets? Did Mr. Arrington or the governor or did any boating safety captain or any official whatsoever talk about uh, the safety of wearing life jackets?
I don't recall if there's any on the video or if any of the personnel spoke about it. I'm just saying that visualizing life jacket on people while on board a vessel swimming is an educational thing.
Do you think this would be sufficient, a sufficient explanation to federal grantors if you were to say that the education was a visual, was visual, that they were wearing safety jackets, therefore education requirements were met?
Sir, you're referring to the that one last paragraph on the bottom, right?
For with regard to education?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, short recess. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We are now back from recess. And before we took a recess, Representative Ed Probst had the floor, and he will proceed further with this line of questioning.
Okay. And did you need me to repeat that, or are you ready with your answer, Chief?
Could you please repeat,
Okay.
Congressman?
What we were discussing earlier was the life jacket and how you had mentioned that the visual is educational, and I think the question that was asked was, um, I have to backtrack. Uh, one moment. Can we take a short recess? Thank you.
At this time, we
recess.
will take a 5-minute recess. We are back from recess, and again, I would like to reiterate that Representative Probst still had the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Um, Chief, I'm going to change my question a little bit. So wearing a life jacket is part of recreational boating safety, obviously, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as we were earlier discussing, you had mentioned the visual effect that it has on educating the public. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What other aspects of recreational boating safety were there on this entire vacation uh, in Pagan?
Swimming with a buddy,
I'm sorry?
swimming with buddies,
Swimming?
swimming with other people.
Swimming with other people? Okay. All right. And do you find this sufficient to meeting the requirements for the RBS grant, Recreational Boating Safety Grant?
Sir, first of all, this document is not from me. I mean, it came from the subpoena,
Right.
but it's from the program manager, and it states there that from Mr. Gary Jensen that it's an allowable thing. That was recreational boating safety was being advertised at the same time we were doing PSD.
Okay. But the PSD that was provided, was that for recreational boating safety?
Well, I don't understand.
Le- When you provide security detail, what is the number one priority in with PSDs?
Our principal,
Who is?
the governor.
Correct. If that is the number one priority, are you saying therefore protecting the governor, on top of that, you're also educating and because we're looking at the payment of this grant, right? This recreational boating safety grant, that protecting the governor, is that also uh, included in in the recreational boating safety grant and what is allowed?
I'm not sure what is allowed, but it says in the paper here that it it's allowed.
Well, it also says that it's protecting public officials would fall outside of it. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and move on. Since this was about boating safety somehow, um, is there a report that you know of where it spoke or advocated or advertised recreational boating safety? Through all these YouTube videos, I have yet to see anything that stresses about the safety of life jackets and other things. We haven't seen anything of that. So, is there some report that we are not aware of that was utilized that documents recreational boating safety to help obviously utilize this grant on this, what appears to be, from everyone else, a promotional tour, which is something that MVA even said. It was a promotional video advertising the our beautiful Northern Islands. Chief, you are aware that this was a promotional tour, right? You are
Yes,
aware that MVA was involved with this, yes?
yes, sir.
Okay. So, needless to say, for us to believe that, and have heard multiple times how much, in fact, MVA stated they got almost $1 billion of advertising dollars from these series of YouTube videos, that they couldn't have asked for more. But through all those promotions, Chief, we didn't see anything that focused on safety and life jackets and other things. And that is what we are calling into question. That clearly in Mr. Jensen's reply, he stated, generally speaking, protecting public officials would fall outside of the recreational boating safety realm and would not be an allowable cost. Yet the grant was being utilized for that reason. And that's where we find problem. And Chief, again, please know that I hope you don't think that I'm trying to antagonize you or anything. I'm just saying that this is part of our concerns when we are looking at this. And once again, you're not being the target of this. It's just that you are the assistant chief. You have 30 years of experience, and we do look to you to find some answers. So, um, if I can continue. Chief, was there any law enforcement or search and rescue mission being conducted during the entire trip to Pagan last summer?
I don't remember, sir.
We can come back to that later. Did you instruct Miss Dylan Guerrero to ask the U.S. Coast Guard if that whole Pagan trip was allowable under the recreational boating safety grant?
No, sir.
If not you, do you know who instructed Miss Dylan Guerrero to send the email to the Coast Guard asking for this, if it was allowable?
I don't know, sir.
So you don't know why Miss Dylan Guerrero sent the email to the Coast Guard in the first place. Is that correct?
It states right there on the letter, sir.
Okay.
Top.
But what motivated her or who told her or instructed her to do so, you're not aware of who did that?
No.
Okay. Why was the inquiry done after the fact, meaning after the whole excursion? Did this have anything to do with the special committee in the 21st House requesting documents related to this trip?
I don't know, sir.
Was any part of the Northern Islands expedition charged to the boating safety grant?
I don't know, sir.
So you don't know if salaries, overtime, supplies, or anything else was charged to the RBS grant?
I wouldn't know, sir, that the admin people would have that.
I have one question. Are you the supervisor for
Ye-
boarding? Oh, yes, you
yes.
are. It says there, in Mr. Jensen's email back to, in reply to Ms. Leongero's, inquiry a day earlier, it says a decision must be made concerning how that time is distributed, meaning which part of the boating safety salary to be charged to the grant and which one is for local funds. Um, Time distribution records must be verified by the supervisors. Did you at any point review the officers that went on this trip to Pagan with the governor? Did you review their time records to determine which part of their salaries should be charged to the RBS grant or local funds?
No, ma'am.
Who would be in charge of that?
Somebody in admin,
Meaning at DPS?
DPS admin office.
So you don't review timesheets
No,
of your
I review the timesheets and sign off.
Okay.
But as far as this one you're saying,
to
the
distribute the.
back part, no, I don't.
How would DPS admin personnel know which one is to be charged to RBS grant and which one to local funds
I
if they were not intimately involved in
Oh.
planning of the boating safety personnel?
I don't know.
You don't know. It's just common practice at DPS to do that. The admin personnel would be the one to do that? Would Vanessa Leon Guerrero be the one to determine?
I don't know if it's her to determine this or the timekeeper, or I don't know.
If the further to that email from Mr. Jensen, if an officer records the time as RBS time, meaning recreational boating safety time, and the supervisor signs off on it, then it will be billed to the RBS grant. So there's really no accountability, is there?
What was that question? There's no,
Accountability?
I don't know, man.
Okay, thank you. Representative Probst, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And um, I'm I'm very concerned, Madam Chair and Chief and colleagues. It's that because we do know how strict federal grants are. Chief, please understand that there is concern by going through all of this, and if the grantors uh, are aware of what's going on, they could also conduct their own audit, and we possibly could jeopardize this. Um, Suffice to say, um, given the grantor agency's email from last summer, that escorting public officials fall outside of the allowable realm of the recreational boating safety grant stipulations. Chief, why does boating safety continue to provide shadowing and PSD services to Governor Torres, Miss Diane Torres, and the governor's family?
I'm sorry, Congressman. Can I just go back real quick to Madam Chair asking about the time and
Yes,
stuff?
please do.
The, this is with the program manager. I don't really deal with the program itself, the grant itself. I don't know how it's done. I just want to make it clear that the program managers who you need to check on that.
Okay, but as a supervisor for boating safety, you would also be responsible for signing off on the timesheet of boating safety officers. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
You may proceed, Representative Probst.
Thank you. So getting back to the question, uh, do you think that it is, given what we do know, that that it is acceptable for boating safety to utilize the recreational boating safety grant to continue to provide shadowing and providing PSD services to Governor Torres, Ms. Diane Torres, and the governor's family?
Are you asking if it's correct to continue doing so?
Yes. Is the RBS grant being utilized by any uh, for all these trips? Does for paying for whether fuel or salaries or overtime or anything, is the RBS grant being utilized in escorting or providing PSD, providing security detail to the governor, Mrs. Diane Torres, and family?
Not that I know of, Congressman.
So all the costs would be utilized by DPS through local funds. Is that correct?
I don't know what funds are being used. That's not my part.
How were the boats purchased? Were these boats paid for with local money, or were were the boats paid through RBS grant money?
That one too, sir, I wouldn't know.
Okay. Well, we should find out, because if we do know that this is unacceptable, and if we do know that 100% of all this fuel, which I highly doubt, but if all this fuel that has been utilized, we looked at over 85 trips, right? And the literally hundreds of thousands of dollars that it has cost taxpayers, whether federal or local tax, doesn't matter. But the expense that is being utilized, Chief, there is a concern, especially at such a difficult time, for the Commonwealth. I think that is one of the big concerns here, because, Chief, you know it in your position of serving for 30 years, and I'm sure you have seen yourself the highs and lows with our economy and have felt the effects of it. It is deeply concerning to see so much resources being utilized for providing security detail, when this clearly should be for the reasons that you mentioned earlier when you were asked about your duties and responsibilities. It comes to education, protecting and serving our public, and other things that you had talked about. I and it was interesting that in your duties and responsibilities, um, what was not mentioned, and you're not the first, the same goes for others who, from boating safety, who we asked about their roles and duties and responsibilities. The one thing that was interesting is that none of you have stated that uh, one of your duties is to provide security detail for the governor, because I believe, I could be wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, that perhaps you do not feel that this is clearly one of your chief responsibilities, that the safety and of the public and the educating the public is more crucial, or completely more important, to protect and serve, right? And and Chief, you certainly do that. I'm not going to end with a question, Madam Chair, but if I may end this, before I yield, with a statement. I want to thank you, and the reason why is, you mentioned 30 years. That's a long term of service. But I also want to apologize to you, Chief, because in all honesty, you shouldn't have to be here today. Your counsel shouldn't have to be here today. Honestly, you have done nothing wrong except serve. And I'm frustrated that we all are here also for all of this. I think that you are doing a remarkable job, and I'm sure your colleagues are, but it's difficult to do so, um, when there are things that are involved, when it comes to politics, or having to be ordered to provide security detail, even perhaps when you may not agree with it. I'm not saying that you don't agree with it. I'm saying that you are simply following the a chain of orders, and that is the saddest part, is that it all comes down to the orders that you have been given, and we have to look through all of this, uh, to see if there is some sort of abuse, and issues that need to be corrected. Um, Chief, I also understand that you have served our country. Is that correct? Have you?
Just the reserve, sir.
Okay. I thank you for your service, nonetheless, and I do apologize if some of our questions do seem tough, but that's part of the role that we have. And I thank you for your honesty and for being forthright and being so forthcoming with us today. Thank you, Chief. Madam Chair, I yield for now.
Thank you, Representative Probst. I just have a couple of questions. Chief Aldon, could you please read the second sentence of Mr. Jensen's reply to Ms. Leon Guerrero or De Leon Guerrero? The highlighted part.
I want me to read it out, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Generally speaking, protecting public issues will fall outside the RBS realm and will not be an allowable cost.
Is it clear to you what that statement says? That protecting public officials would not be an allowable cost.
Yes, it says also in the fourth sentence, ma'am.
Okay, so all this PSDing and shadowing the governor is not an allowable cost to the recreational boating safety grant. Is that correct? According to the statement of Mr. Jensen.
Yes, ma'am.
Given that, and now knowing that, why would boating safety continue to be providing these services to Governor Torres, Mrs. Diane Torres, their family? First of all, the governor's family is not even public officials. They're private individuals. So why would boating safety be continuing these, even though it is not allowed? This puts the grant at risk, serious risk of losing it for our CNMI government. Do you know why boating safety would continue to provide these services?
Excuse me, protection to the governor. Whenever there are two or more missions being performed simultaneously, a decision must be made concerning how that time is distributed. Those time distribution records
Okay.
must be verified by supervisors. But at the end of it, it says, whatever the supervisor is comfortable with is good with me. So
And
this
that is
doesn't
why we were
necessarily
asking,
mean that
and that is why we were asking the chief what boating safety or water safety education was being conducted by these officers. And you said the fact that someone is wearing a life vest is considered education to satisfy the grant agreement?
Just as it says there by Mr. Gary, uh, the promoter was promoting also recreational boating safety in advertising boating itself.
Okay, after that sentence, it says a tourism promoter comes along. We know for a fact that Mr. Arrington didn't just happen to come along on this Pagan trip. This, and the governor has stated this publicly, this was planned a year out in advance. So I must ask, what was the primary mission then of boating safety going to Pagan during this last summer?
PSD.
PSD. And that, according to the United States Coast Guard, is not an allowable cost. Protecting public officials is not an allowable cost pursuant to the recreational boating safety grant. So in your opinion then, whether it's federal funds or local, scarce local funds being used. Is boating safety using one restricted federal funds under the grant because they're very restrictive? They're specific to providing education, water safety and boating safety education. That grant is also used for providing public assistance, as you have mentioned early on this morning, public assistance for overdue swimmers, distressed vessels, drowning. Is that correct? As well as law enforcement activities. So those grants are very restrictive to that particular purpose. On the other hand, if it was not being charged to the recreational boating safety grant, we are then using scarce CNMI funds during the pandemic last year. During a government shutdown because of the pandemic, we were using CNMI local funds and taxpayers were paying for an extended vacation for Governor Torres, his wife, their family, and their friends. If that were a public purpose, why wasn't the public invited to that party in Pagan? Can you answer that?
Beyond my level, ma'am, I don't want to make an opinion on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will accept that answer. At this time, we will move on. I would like to recognize Representative Vicente Camacho at this time.
Thank you, Chair. Lieutenant Aldon, the boating safety captains who previously appeared before this body have testified that they do not keep records of passengers on the DPS boats, that they do not check or record cargo being transported on the DPS boats, that nobody checks or records cargo on DPS boats, and that DPS vessels are not subject to inspection when they pull into port either in Guam or Sinamai. Lieutenant Aldan, are these accurate statements? DPS does not keep records of passengers?
No, we don't.
Okay. But isn't this not a basic boating safety measure to keep passengers manifest?
No, it's not a requirement.
Okay.
I mean, if you come along, I know who you are. Of course, the commissioner would have told me to transport you, so that's all I need.
Okay, so what if, God forbid, something happens at sea? How would you account for anyone on the vessel if you don't have records of who was on it?
Through memory, we just know who's on the boat, and
Okay,
if
I have one question, excuse me, Representative Camacho,
go ahead, Chair.
in relation to your initial questions. You mentioned, Chief Aldon, that you do not keep records of passengers. Is that correct?
correct,
Isn't it because these boats are primarily for search and rescue, not passenger transportation boats?
correct.
Thank you. You may proceed, Representative Camacho.
Thank you. Does DPS not check or record cargo on their boats?
What do you mean by that, sir?
Let me just repeat the question. Does DPS not check or record cargo on their boats?
We don't check it, we don't record it. We just ask them if that's yours. You want to load it? Yes, load it up.
Okay. And why not, sir?
We just don't check.
Just don't check, okay. And is it true that DPS boats are not subject to inspection at the ports?
I'm sorry, Congressman.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry I didn't.
Okay,
get
let
that.
me go back to that question. Is it true that DPS boats are not subject to inspection at the ports?
Uh,
These are statements
by
made from the previous officers that appeared.
inspection by whom, sir?
Who would inspect boats when they come in? It would be officers at the port.
Fish and Wildlife, other
Okay.
regulatory, DEQ, anybody who
They're allowed
regulates.
to inspect the boat if they want.
If they want.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So if the ports only inspect if they want to or not, then how would we know if there are any illegal or contraband items brought on board? Let's say weapons, hazardous materials, endangered or threatened species. You wouldn't know if nobody's checking, sir, right? So that's kind of what we're trying to get at.
You're asking for the proper authorities to board the vessel and check, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, they're welcome to do so.
Okay.
But you, boating safety operators, who get on these boat trips with the governor or anybody, wouldn't know, right? Because nobody's checking. Based on testimony we've received from other officers, it's not their responsibility. However, it's everybody's responsibility. How would law enforcement personnel know that no illegal contraband or weapons are being transported on boating safety boats if nobody's checking? If boating safety officers are not checking for cargo, how would you guys know whether contraband is being transported on a law enforcement vessel?
We wouldn't know. Uh, I wouldn't even ask the governor to open his stuff up. He's our governor.
Nobody is above the law, Assistant Chief.
Okay.
Also, I have another question. Would it also be correct to say that boating safety officers do not check for cargo because these are not cargo boats? They're not used. Their primary mission, again, is for search and rescue, law enforcement, public education, water safety. It's not to transport cargo, is it?
If there's space to put a box, you can.
Yes, but that's not the primary purpose, right, of these boats?
Oh, true. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm very concerned about your statement that, you wouldn't ask the governor. I'm very, very concerned. Nobody's above the law, not even the governor. Um, he may think he is, but he is not. Neither are we. We are all accountable to the laws of the land. Representative Camacho, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Continuing on. Have you yourself ever seen cargo being brought on board a DPS boat that was transporting or escorting the governor?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay.
I don't recall.
All right. Have you ever seen alcohol on the boat?
I don't recall, sir.
Have you ever seen fishing gear on the boat?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen coconut crabs on the boat?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen fruit bats on the boat?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen guns or other hunting gear on the boat?
No, sir.
Have you ever seen political campaign supplies or materials on the boat?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Have you ever seen any of these items being brought onto any of the other boats transporting governor or his family while DPS was providing escort or protective service?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there standards of operating procedures for DPS boating safety?
I'm sorry, say again, sir.
Are there standard operating procedures for DPS boating safety, SOP rather?
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay. Does your SOP not require keeping a record of passengers or cargo?
No, sir.
Okay. In your professional opinion as a DPS boating safety officer, should DPS boating safety policies or procedures change in any way?
Should it change?
Should change in any way? Would you change anything on your SOP to reflect certain things?
As of now, no, sir.
Okay. And if you were to do any changes, what would be the first thing you change?
I wouldn't change anything for now, sir.
Okay, not now. All right. 85 trips using search and rescue vessels, thousands of gallons of fuel, hundreds of personnel hours, multiple officers at a time. Lieutenant Aldan, are you aware of any other governor who has used DPS boating safety vessels, officers, and government paid fuel for recreational trips and transportation as much as Governor Torres?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Okay. Are you aware of any other governor who has ever used DPS boating safety vessels at all, even once for his personal use?
I don't know.
You submitted the records this committee subpoenaed you for on August 6, 2021. Has the governor utilized any DPS vessels or boating safety personnel for other boating trips since August 6, 2021?
You're asking to the present time?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you did, when, where, and for what purpose? Do you have-
Just a PSD.
Just for PSD. Okay, that's the. And do we know where he went?
We followed him on his boat,
Okay, on his
but we
boat.
followed his boat.
And do you by chance have a date?
I no, I don't know.
Guess we can find that out later, no?
Was it in the last 2 weeks?
I can find out.
Oh, no need.
When
I was just trying to get a time frame. Would it have been in the last 2 weeks maybe or last month?
maybe.
Okay, okay, fair enough.
Okay, thank you for that. Lieutenant Governor Palacios testified that he himself has never been on a DPS boat. He also testified that he was aware of the late Governor Eloy Enos having had his own personal boat when he was governor. And to his knowledge, Governor Enos never used DPS boats when he wanted to go fishing. Lieutenant Aldan, did DPS boating safety ever provide search and rescue vessels to shadow or escort late Governor Enos when he went out on his personal boat?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Okay. Okay, so did the practice of sending out DPS vessels and multiple officers to accompany the governor and his family on his fishing expeditions or trips to Managaha or other islands really just begin with Governor Torres?
I don't know if there's any other of the other governors, sir.
In the current time, yeah. So,
Is that what you're asking, sir?
yeah, basically, is he the first governor to actually utilize all this as a sitting governor?
Oh, I wouldn't know, sir, if the previous governors were afforded the same.
Okay. And Chair, I want to add one more to this. It's more like a clarification statement. Um, Lieutenant Aldan, earlier I asked, and as a matter of fact, I can read out the question that I asked earlier. Would be certified and licensed. I believe your answer was no. Is that correct? Um, uh, Cam, can you bring that up? I did find something that otherwise, we're just gonna clarify this if it's correct. That little, that no, the one I asked you to bring, the boating safety section. Can you see that, sir? This section is under the boating safety section, this statement. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Um, is that true? Because that is on your website.
Yes, it is, sir.
Um, Let me read it out. This boating safety section actually reads, our qualification, our boating safety officers are certified maritime law enforcement, national boating safety instructors, certified divers from the National Association of Underwater Instructors, and certified under the United States Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management Institution. And the last update to this was June 10, 2014. Is this still true in the sense of qualifications?
Yes, sir. Since I got in, we haven't been able to send anybody for maritime law enforcement training. It was after you saw the law, they couldn't send anyone. We were able to send two under boating investigations. At the time, that's what they had to offer. And because of the pandemic kicking in, all trainings right now are suspended, so we can't get anyone. But there are some that are certified under the Maritime Law Enforcement Agency.
But you also said, sir, that there was nobody qualified and it's not a requirement. Maybe the requirement part is correct. But the certification that I did ask earlier, you did say no. But see how we clarified all that?
I think you were asking if captain license or right? Oh, okay.
No,
It's
no.
it's
All I
okay.
asked was the requirement to be certified and licensed. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
But that was for clarification because I did find something and I just want to make sure you saw that.
Yes, sir.
But I do know that there is somebody out there that is certified.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for your answers. Are you for now? No, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. I recognize Representative Ed Probst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cam, could you pull out that link I sent to you? Um, and we'll just go by this article that we found. Chief, on July 8, 2020, there was an article that appeared in on Pacific News Center about a search continuing off the coast of Saipan for a man who fell in the water Sunday. Now, this is the time when the deer meat for dinner, Pagan family trip or whatever it was going on. And if you, the man who went missing, who was never found, the uh, late Honorio Ricky and Cabo went missing. He supposedly slipped and fell into the waters at the infinity pool in Esteo, Saipan. And if you read on, it talks about search teams from CNMI DPS, DFAMS, and that the um, the search resumed on Monday morning, included the Coast Guard and Helicopter Sea Combat Squadron 25. The CNMI Division of Fish and Wildlife also launched a boat to assist in the search. Um, and then it continued on that the search continued again Tuesday with the United States Coast Guard cutter Sequoia joining a smaller CNMI Port Authority vessel, a local fisherman's boat, and a police jet ski. Uh, the reason why I bring this up is one of the concerns that was brought up with utilizing all the resources through impact or other search and rescue boats that that may not be available. And at this time, when this incident occurred, we had brought this up and about having the impact or the other boats. Were these search and rescue boats available when this person went missing? Or were they in fact in Pagan?
The impact was here, sir. It responded during the initial call uh, back to that area.
And there's a log for that. And the reason why I ask is because that was not what we were being told. That the reason why the CNMI Division of Fish and Wildlife was called in was because of the lack of search and rescue boats from DPS. So, is there a log for that for the actual search by the impact or any other search and rescue boats by DPS that was logged in that evening looking for this gentleman?
Yes, sir.
And we could be provided that. Is that correct?
It's a case file. You have to request,
Okay.
and then
So
we
the
can.
case file would have that information.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
Thank you, Representative Probst. I hereby recognize Representative Manglonia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of clarifying questions. The boat logs that we've, or the yes, the logs that we've been displaying as exhibits. Can you just briefly describe what what information is gathered? How do you record? You do on a daily basis. These the logs that have been brought up. Yes, like what's up on the screen right now. How are
Okay.
these logs prepared?
How are they inputted? Is
Like how are they prepared, or why do you do it every day? What's the point of keeping this record? And what information do you record on these logs?
since I got in, pretty much this is how they log it. Whatever they feel is important, they want to put in there. Um, everything they want to put. The only things I need from here is if they have recorded an accident, a boating accident, somebody got hurt in the water, drowned or died as a result of boat or in the water. Any education activities, parts of the program that I need to record. That's what I'll get from the logbook.
Okay, but
Everything else is just a practice that they've been doing. They just write these things down, but it's not necessarily needed.
okay, but you have a record for every single day up until today. That's something that you keep every day?
Some are skipped some days.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to get at is, do you also record the daily activities if there are no boats if there are no um, equipments in the water or anything, or you're not patrolling out in the ocean? Do you keep
Normally,
daily
yes,
records as well?
yes, the personnel do that as well.
Okay. Um, you've also mentioned in your other responses that you're sent out to shadow the governor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Whenever you provide these security details, you go out and shadow the governor.
Yes, sir.
So, wouldn't you say that part of the responsibilities of shadowing the governor is to kind of assess the situation, identify who's with the governor, and all the activities that the governor is performing when out in the water?
Well, if the governor's leaving on a PSD and we're doing a PSD, we know who's on our police boat.
Right. But how would you know who was on the boat when you don't keep record of who's around? Do you keep a list of um, people who are with the governor out on these boating trips?
Oh no, no, sir.
Right. So you just base all of this on memory, as you stated earlier.
For the moment, yes. If we're following a boat, that's the boat we gotta follow.
So, say if the governor were to go out on the boat today and something, as Rep Camacho mentioned, God forbid something were to happen, maybe nothing too big, but a week from today, you would be able to recall everyone who was around the governor, who may have been involved in whatever the situation may be. You would just base it off of memory.
If something were to happen during that mission, then we'd be writing it down. If nothing, then we don't write it, you know.
Yeah, well, sometimes some of these things may arise coming back from the sea, right? Maybe a person was injured and then later on it got worse, and so they would have to backtrack through these events to try to figure out what had transpired. And so and because Rep Camacho also mentioned another question about, would you change any of these policies? And I think you mentioned that as of right now, there's nothing that would be changed. And so I just wanted to bring up these questions because, you know, in in hearing previous testimonies, other captains that were sent on missions don't keep track of what comes on board, don't keep track of who's around. These are areas of concerns that, you may want to revisit in the event, something does happen. I mean, these will all fall into your hands. And so it seems like you keep a very detailed account of everything that goes on based on these logs. And so yeah, I just wanted to find out if there's another log that you would keep track of, passenger manifest and things of that sort. And so yeah, I just want to take clarification on that. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir.
You, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Maglonia. Are there any other questions from the members? If there are none, Assistant Chief Kevin Aldon, I want to thank you for your 30 years of service to our Commonwealth, um, and your years of service to our nation as well. It is now 3:53, and we are ready to excuse you or dismiss you for the rest of the hearing. And I want to wish you well in your service to our Commonwealth, and go for broke.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee. Go for broke, ma'am.
you very much. We really appreciate your time. Please know it's not about you. You know, we really appreciate you coming in. Thank you for your service. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll call you later.
Yes, we did. We got like 2 years.
Good afternoon. We are back and we have excused the witness for today. At this time, I would like to ask the members if they have any comments at this time. I recognize Representative Vicente Camacho.
Thank you, Chair and colleagues. Going through today's hearing was very eye-opening, and one of my concerns was the fact that none of these, boating safety officers are certified or licensed, and I just kind of hope that they'll look into that really closely and start thinking about certifying these folks, working on their SOPs, and really just kind of get their voting system program together, because it could be quite bad if they don't get their records together. So that's kind of like what I want to put out there. Just hope that they start going out there and start thinking about certifying themselves and licensing if they need to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Camacho. Are there any other members who would like to make comments? I recognize Representative Ed Probst.
Well, Madam Chair, I wanted to thank Chief Odon for coming in today and doing his best to answer our questions. Obviously, there are some questions that need to be directed at a few others, but I do want to call attention to some of the things that were brought up, and I'm sure you will include in your recap. But that that fuel purchase was something that really caught my attention for $919.10, the reimbursement. Um, I also want to say that with all these trips, literally the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been spent just on fuel alone, not to mention the overtime and all the other things that is included with it, and also the concern with the RBS grant, the Recreational Boating Safety Grant, that they're trying to find a way to somehow tie it in, when clearly we know that providing security detail is not to be included, and that just shouldn't be the case. But if they are not utilizing the RBS grant as they may believe, again, how were these boats purchased? They were most likely, of course, because we just don't have the financial means to buy such boats, with federal grants and with federal dollars. But I don't think, and I cannot imagine that the the grants were created so that DPS could be providing all this security detail at the expense of a federal and local monies that are all obviously it's taxpayer funded, right? No such thing as government funded. It's taxpayer funded. I am concerned about this type of abuse, and also the question that had been brought up with regard to past governors. But what we do know is that no, this is unprecedented. Even the lieutenant governor has stated that he's never been on a DPS boat and other things. At a time where every dollar counts, where money is tight, um, this type of extravagance is is literally costly. And what it costs is that it means money that could go somewhere else isn't going there. It's being utilized to protect this for all the security detail. I did want to touch upon something that I am concerned about, that not just with Chief Odon's um, answers today, but oftentimes when we ask about um, who's on board this, and you know should there ever a boat ever capsize, you would want to know the list, the passengers, who's on board. Um, Madam Chair, there have to be changes after this investigation. There should be, for all intent and purposes, we should know what's going on every boat, what's being put on those boats and transported between the Northern Islands and to our islands. We have to know. That's just something that should always be documented. There obviously is a lot of room for improvement. I hope that that can be done in throughout this through this investigation. So, thank you, Madam Chair. I yield.
Thank you. Are there any other members? Recognize Representative Mangonia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Based on the hearings we've had in regards to boating safety, I just find it concerning that um, you know not a lot is done in regards to keeping track of who are on these strips, what's being brought on board these vessels, um, and even how much this is costing the government in terms of trying to be more efficient, especially when traveling to the neighboring islands, whether it be Rota or Tinian, um, where it could be way cheaper to fly into Rota or Tinian than to use these vessels. Not only is it costly in terms of fuel, but it depreciates these vessels much quicker when you know it takes a matter of minutes to get to Rota and Tinian. One thing that I also want to bring up that I caught in one of the exhibits that was brought up was the $919 reimbursement for fuel for a boat that went to Rota. Um, the receipt was dated September 15 at 6:29 a.m. and the TIA was processed for a cabinet meeting on Rota for the same day, and that meeting was scheduled to start at 11 a.m. And so, taking into account the number of people who may have been on board and the travel time to Rota, this is certainly questionable that you would leave on the same day and it would only take 5 hours or even less to get to Rota by boat. And so this was something that I picked up when you brought in that question for reimbursement. But aside from that, Chairwoman and colleagues, um, you know, I just think that with all the time and effort they put into recording information that may or may not be used, having vessel usage report that is not signed by the commander, um, you know, I don't know if there's something that is being hidden, but it's something that the committee can continue to look further into to ensure that um, government property is used for its rightful purpose, um, and that we don't shortchange the public in terms of um, depreciating uh, government equipment and vehicles that is intended to keep the public safe and well informed. And so, with that, Madam Chair and colleagues, um, this is something that we can further look into, and should we need to gather more information, this is something that I hope the chair can consider when requesting for these information. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Minglonia. I would like to mention that between 2015 to 2021, Governor Torres and his wife took well over 85 boat trips using CNMI resources. Based on the testimony provided today by Assistant Chief Kevin Aldon and the evidence entered into exhibits, it has been established that Governor Torres and Mrs. Diane Torres, in coordination with the DPS Commissioner, have caused precious CNMI resources to be expended for their personal benefit and put at risk federal funds that were restricted to public education, in water safety and boating safety, law enforcement activities, and boating safety assistance for overdue swimmers and distressed vessels out there. And all the while, our lone hospital was pleading for financial assistance to keep the lights on, but ultimately was disconnected by CUC. And medical referral continues to be underfunded to the tune of $27 million. And while also the executive director of CUC mentioned 2 days ago, they are using antiquated generators for our power generation. Generators that could kick the bucket at any minute. And as of June 20th, 2020, Shell gas station is owed over $93,000 in fuel expenses by the Department of Public Safety. So it begs the question, is it prudent and reasonable to continue providing PSD for Governor Torres, his wife, his family members by boating safety? You know, these are scarce local resources, and to use them in such a reckless and unreasonable manner for fishing trips and camping trips to the Northern Islands is highly questionable. For example, on May 27, 2017, Mrs. Diane Torres at 10 p.m. was dropped off at Maniagaha and was later picked up at midnight and then arrives back here in Saipan at 1:40 a.m. This midnight cruise served no public purpose, and it was strictly for the personal benefit of Mrs. Diane Torres. Again, on June 18, 2017, Mrs. Torres was transported to Maniagaha with a party of 8 for nothing more than a sunset happy hour cruise using government resources, specifically a boating safety jet boat, fuel, and numerous DPS personnel. There is also evidence that shows, excuse me, that the Papa San, a boat belonging to one of the Torres brothers, was refilled on June 15th of this year by the impact boat. There's also evidence, as we have presented today, that a vessel belonging to Mr. Vic Torres was escorted to the Smiling Cove Marina. Furthermore, Assistant Chief Aldon indicated there would be no instance that the governor would pay for fuel for boating safety vessels, nor have they ever asked the governor or the lieutenant governor to pay for any fuel for boating safety. There is, however, evidence that shows Governor Torres reimbursed himself $919.10 on September 15th of 2017, which he claims was for DPS boat fuel. Evidence also clearly shows that the governor, his wife, numerous members of their family, and friends went to Pagan last summer using scarce local CNMI funds for nothing more than recreational purposes, a family vacation, while the whole CNMI was basically under a lockdown due to COVID-19. I would like to also, that concludes my observations of the hearing today, but I would also like to inform the general public that there will be no public hearings next week as we go through mountains, literally thousands of pages of documents yet to be reviewed, and for us to prepare the necessary subpoenas for the witnesses. I thank you, everyone, to the viewing public for your keen interest in these hearings. It is now 4:14 p.m. and this meeting is hereby adjourned.